The rain-slicked streets of Washington, D.C. gleamed under the streetlights. But for Elias Carter, the world was a storm of secrets threatening to drown him. At 35, he'd spent years hiding who he was, his heart a locked vault, until tonight when he stood before Senator Margaret Hale's husband, Daniel, and confessed a truth that could ruin them both. One reckless moment, one whispered confession, and Elias had set their lives on a collision course with destiny. Elias had always been careful, a political strategist who thrived in the shadows of power. Raised in a small Ohio town, he'd learned early to bury his feelings, to smile through the pain of being different. His sharp jawline and piercing hazel eyes made him a magnet for attention, but he'd built walls no one could breach until Daniel. At 40, Daniel Hale was the opposite, warm, steady, the kind of man who made everyone feel seen. Married to a rising star in the Senate, Daniel was the perfect husband on paper, his salt and pepper hair and quiet charm a fixture at galas. But Elias saw the loneliness in his eyes, the unspoken questions that mirrored his own. They'd met a year ago at a fundraiser, Daniel's hand lingering too long during a handshake, Elias's breath catching at the spark. Small moments followed shared coffee breaks, late-night talks about policy that veered into dreams and fears. Elias knew it was dangerous. Daniel was married, a public figure tethered to a woman whose conservative platform clashed with everything Elias was. Yet, every glance, every brush of shoulders, pulled them closer to a line neither could cross. Tonight, in a quiet D.C. park, Elias had broken. "I'm in love with you," he'd said, voice trembling, rain masking the tears on his face. Daniel's silence was deafening, his brown eyes wide with shock, but he hadn't pulled away. That moment stretched, fragile and electric, until Daniel whispered, "I felt it too." The confession was a spark in a powder keg. Margaret Hale was a senator with a fierce anti-LGBT platform, her speeches rallying voters against the very love Elias and Daniel shared. If the world knew, it wouldn't just destroy their reputations, it would unravel lives, careers, families. Yet, as they stood there, the city humming around them, Elias felt alive for the first time. Their secret began in stolen moments. A brush of hands in a crowded elevator, coded messages hidden in work emails. Elias would lie awake, replaying Daniel's laughter, the way his voice softened when he said Elias's name. But guilt gnawed at him. Daniel was married, bound by vows and a public life. Elias hated the secrecy, the lies, but he couldn't stop. Every meeting was a risk, every touch a rebellion against a world that demanded they stay silent. One night, at a dive bar far from Capitol Hill, Daniel reached across the table, his fingers grazing Elias's. "I've never felt this before," he admitted, voice low. "Not with her. Not with anyone." Elias's heart raced, but fear followed. "What are we doing, Daniel? This could ruin you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe I'm tired of being someone else's version of perfect." The words lingered, a promise and a warning. Elias knew the stakes. Daniel's marriage. His daughter, Lily, a bright 16-year-old who adored her father. Elias had seen her at events, her laughter a painful reminder of what he could destroy. Yet, Daniel's resolve only grew. He started questioning Margaret's politics, her cold ambition. Elias saw the man he loved waking up, shedding the mask he'd worn for years. But secrets don't stay buried in D.C. A journalist, Sarah Klein, had been sniffing around, her sharp eyes catching Elias and Daniel's lingering looks. She was relentless, a bloodhound with a knack for scandal. Elias felt her shadow, the threat of exposure looming. He urged Daniel to be careful, but Daniel was reckless, driven by a hunger to be free. "I'm done hiding," he said one night, pulling Elias close in a hotel room. I want a life with you. Elias wanted to believe it was possible, but the world wasn't kind to men like them. Not here. Not now. The weight of their love was a tightrope, and every step felt like a fall waiting to happen. The city pulsed with secrets, but none burned brighter than Elias and Daniel's. Their love was a fragile flame, flickering in the shadows of a world that would snuff it out if given the chance. Every stolen moment, late-night drives, quiet walks through forgotten corners of D.C. felt like a victory, but also a countdown. Elias tried to keep his head clear, to focus on his work-shaping campaigns, but Daniel consumed his thoughts. He'd catch himself smiling at a text, a simple thinking of you that carried the weight of a vow. Daniel, meanwhile, was unraveling. At home, Margaret's icy demeanor grew sharper, her campaign demands pulling him into photo ops and speeches he no longer believed in. He'd stand beside her, smiling for cameras, while his heart was miles away with Elias. One evening, in a cramped diner off the Beltway, Daniel slid into the booth across from Elias, his face drawn. "She knows something's off," he said, stirring his coffee endlessly. "She asked why I've been distant." Elias's stomach twisted. "What did you say?" Daniel's eyes met his, steady but scared. "That I'm stressed." "But she's not stupid, Elias. She's watching me." Margaret Hale wasn't just a senator. She was a force. Her charisma built on a platform of family values that left no room for men like Elias. Her team was ruthless, sniffing out weaknesses in opponents and allies alike. If she suspected Daniel, it wasn't just their love at stake. It was everything. Elias reached for Daniel's hand under the table, a small act of defiance. "We'll figure it out," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Their meetings grew riskier. A hotel in Virginia, a friend's empty apartment, anywhere they could steal an hour. Each time, Elias felt the pull of Daniel's warmth, the way his touch erased years of loneliness. But the fear was always there, a shadow in the room. Sarah Klein, the journalist, was closing in. Elias had seen her at a press conference, her notepad out, eyes scanning the crowd. She'd asked pointed questions about Daniel's role in Margaret's campaign, her tone too sharp to be casual. One night, Daniel showed up at Elias's apartment unannounced, his coat damp from the rain. "I can't keep doing this," he said, voice breaking, "pretending I'm someone I'm not." Elias pulled him inside, heart pounding. "What are you saying?" Daniel's hands cupped Elias's face, his touch desperate. "I'm saying I love you, and I'm tired of hiding it. I want to leave her." The words were a shockwave. Elias had dreamed of this, but the reality was a knife's edge. "Daniel, think about Lily. Think about what this would do to her." Daniel's face crumpled. "I know, but I'm suffocating. I can't keep lying to her, to myself." Elias held him, their foreheads pressed together, the weight of the impossible sinking in. They made a plan, careful, quiet steps. Daniel would talk to a lawyer, explore a separation that wouldn't destroy his daughter's world. Elias would keep their secret locked tight, dodging Sarah's questions. But plans in D.C. were fragile, and Sarah was relentless. She cornered Elias at a fundraiser, her smile sharp as glass. "You and Daniel Hale seem close," she said, watching him like a hawk. Elias forced a laugh, heart racing. "Just colleagues." Her eyes narrowed. "Sure. For now." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He saw their future crumbling headlines. Scandals. Daniel's face splashed across every news outlet. But worse was the thought of losing him. He texted Daniel, "We need to be smarter. She's onto us." Daniel's reply was instant. "I don't care anymore. I just want you." The recklessness thrilled and terrified Elias. He loved Daniel's courage, his refusal to bow to the world's rules. But courage in D.C. came at a cost, and Elias wasn't sure they could pay it. The air in D.C. felt heavier, as if the city itself knew Elias and Daniel's secret and was holding its breath. Elias walked the streets with a constant knot in his chest, scanning crowds for Sarah Klein's sharp gaze. Daniel, though, was a man on fire, his resolve to break free growing with every passing day. They met in a small bookstore, tucked in a corner where political memoirs gathered dust. Daniel's fingers brushed Elias's as they reached for the same book, a quiet intimacy that made Elias's heart ache. "I talked to a lawyer," Daniel whispered, his voice steady. "It's complicated, but it's possible." Elias nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. A divorce would be blood in the water for Margaret's enemies, and Sarah Klein was circling. Margaret's campaign was in overdrive, her speeches sharper, her rhetoric more divisive. At a rally, Elias watched from the back as Daniel stood beside her, his smile a mask. Lily was there too, her teenage energy bright but fragile, clapping for her mother. Elias's heart twisted. He loved Daniel, but Lily's innocence was a weight he couldn't ignore. That night, Daniel came to Elias's apartment, his eyes alight with defiance. "I told Margaret I want out," he said. Elias froze. "What?" "You didn't," Daniel cut him off, stepping closer. "Not about us." "Not yet. But I said I'm unhappy." She didn't even blink. "Elias." "She just said we'd talk after the election." The words were a gut punch. Margaret's ambition was a wall, and Daniel was ready to tear it down. Their love deepened in the chaos. Stolen kisses in parked cars, whispered promises in hotel rooms. Elias felt alive, but the fear was a constant hum. Sarah Klein's articles started hinting at cracks in the Hale marriage, her words vague but pointed. Elias knew she was fishing, waiting for a slip. He urged Daniel to slow down, to think of Lily, but Daniel was relentless. "I've wasted years being someone I'm not," he said one night, his voice fierce. "I won't lose you too." Then came the first crack. Lily showed up at Daniel's office, her eyes red from crying. "Why are you fighting with Mom?" she asked, voice small. Daniel knelt before her, his face breaking. "I'm trying to be honest, kiddo." Elias, watching from the doorway, felt like an intruder. He wanted to protect them both, but he was the storm tearing their world apart. Sarah Klein struck next. An article dropped, a subtle jab about rumors surrounding Daniel's close friendships. It was careful, deniable, but the comments online were vicious. Elias's phone buzzed with Daniel's text, "We need to talk now." They met in a park, the same one where Elias had confessed. Daniel's face was pale. "She's getting closer," he said. "But I'm not backing down." Elias wanted to scream, to beg Daniel to stop, but the fire in Daniel's eyes held him. "I love you," Daniel said, pulling him close. "And I'm done being afraid." The kiss that followed was desperate, a promise sealed in the face of ruin. Elias knew they were running out of time, but in that moment, he didn't care. The scandal broke like a thunderstorm over D.C. Sarah Klein's article hit the front page of a major outlet. Senator Hale's husband linked to secret affair. No names, no proof, but the insinuations were clear. Elias read it at his desk, his hands shaking, the words blurring as his worst fears came to life. Daniel called immediately. "It's not over," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. "She doesn't have proof." But Elias knew better. Sarah was a hunter, and they were her prey. Social media was ablaze, speculation ripping through the city. Margaret's team issued a statement denying baseless rumors. But the damage was done. Elias met Daniel in a friend's basement, a temporary hideout. Daniel's face was drawn, but his eyes burned with resolve. "I'm telling Margaret tonight," he said. Elias grabbed his arm. "Daniel, this will destroy everything." "Lily, your life." Daniel shook his head. "My life's already a lie. I want it to be ours." Margaret's reaction was colder than Elias expected. She didn't cry or scream. She calculated. "You're throwing away everything for a fling." She spat, her voice venomous. Daniel stood tall. "It's not a fling. I love him." The words hung in the air, a declaration that shattered the perfect image of the Hale family. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." Lily was the hardest part. Daniel sat her down, his voice gentle but breaking. "I love your mom, but I'm not in love with her. I've found someone who makes me happy." Lily's face crumpled. "Is it that guy?" "Elias." Daniel nodded, and she ran to her room, slamming the door. Elias, waiting outside, felt his heart break. He'd never wanted to hurt her, but love was a blade that cut deep. The fallout was swift. Margaret's campaign team went into damage control, painting Daniel as a confused husband misled by outside influences. Elias's name stayed out of the headlines for now, but he felt the eyes on him. Colleagues whispering, friends pulling away. He and Daniel moved to a small apartment, a temporary refuge. But the world outside was a battlefield. Sarah Klein didn't stop. She published follow-ups, each one bolder, hinting at Elias's identity without naming him. Daniel, meanwhile, was relentless, meeting with lawyers, planning a public statement. "I want to tell our story," he told Elias one night, his hand warm in Elias's. "Not their version. Ours." Elias wanted to believe in Daniel's courage, but fear choked him. "They'll tear us apart," he whispered. Daniel's smile was soft but fierce. "Let them try." Elias and Daniel's new life was a fragile bubble, their apartment a sanctuary amid the storm. They cooked dinners together, laughed over bad TV, but the outside world pressed in. Margaret's campaign doubled down, her speeches now laced with veiled references to betrayal and family. Elias felt the weight of every word, knowing he was the shadow behind them. Lily was distant, her texts to Daniel short and cold. Elias hated the rift he'd caused, but Daniel was unwavering. "She'll come around," he said, though his voice wavered. They planned a quiet dinner with her, hoping to rebuild. But before it could happen, Sarah Klein struck again. Her new article named Elias outright, senator's husband in affair with campaign strategist. The internet exploded. Photos of Elias and Daniel from months ago, innocent moments, now twisted into evidence. Elias's phone buzzed with threats, his inbox flooded with hate. He wanted to run, but Daniel held him close. "We're stronger than this," he said, his voice a lifeline. They decided to fight back. Daniel contacted a sympathetic journalist, Mia Torres, who agreed to tell their side. In a small studio, they recorded an interview, Daniel's hand steady in Elias's as they spoke. "I'm gay," Daniel said, the words ringing with truth. "And I love Elias. I won't hide anymore." Elias's heart swelled, but fear lingered. The interview aired, and for a moment, they felt free. But freedom came at a cost. Margaret's team retaliated, leaking private emails, painting Elias as a homewrecker. Lily's school became a battleground, kids whispering about her dad. She called Daniel, sobbing. "Why did you have to do this?" Elias felt the guilt like a physical weight, but Daniel's resolve never wavered. "I'm doing this for us," he told her. "For you to know what love really is." The city was divided. Some rallied behind them, sharing stories of their own struggles. Others condemned them, their love a scandal too far. Elias and Daniel clung to each other, their love a beacon in the chaos. But the cracks were showing. Could they survive a world determined to tear them apart? The interview changed everything. Elias and Daniel's story was no longer a whisper. It was a shout, echoing across D.C. and beyond. Support poured in letters, messages, strangers sharing their own truths. But the hate was louder, a tidal wave of vitriol that crashed over their lives. Margaret's campaign spun the narrative, framing Daniel as a traitor, Elias as a predator. Protesters gathered outside their apartment, signs screaming shame. Elias stopped going to work, his career in ruins. Daniel, though, was a rock, his love for Elias unwavering. "We're not the villains," he said one night, holding Elias as they watched the news. "They're just scared of the truth." Lily was the hardest battle. She refused to see Daniel, her text silent. Elias urged him to reach out, to fight for her. Daniel wrote her a letter, pouring out his heart, explaining his love for Elias and his hope for her understanding. Days later, she agreed to meet. At a quiet cafe, she sat across from them, her eyes guarded. "I don't get it," she said, "but I don't want to lose you, Dad." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Sarah Klein's article slowed, her ammunition running low without new dirt. But Margaret wasn't done. She pushed a new bill, a Defense of Marriage Act. Her speech is venomous. Elias saw the toll it took on Daniel, the guilt of dismantling his family. "I'm not giving up," Daniel said, but his voice was tired. Elias held him, whispering, "We're enough." They found allies, activists, friends, even a few politicians who spoke out. A rally formed, a sea of rainbow flags outside the Capitol. Elias and Daniel stood together, hands clasped, their love a quiet rebellion. For the first time, Elias felt hope, a belief that they could carve out a life despite the odds. The rally was a turning point, a moment where Elias and Daniel's love became a symbol. Strangers chanted their names, their story inspiring others to speak out. But victory was bittersweet. Margaret's bill gained traction, her campaign fueled by the scandal. Elias felt the weight of their fight, the cost of their love. Lily began to soften, spending time with Daniel, asking questions about Elias. One evening, she joined them for dinner, her laughter a fragile bridge. "You make Dad happy," she told Elias, her voice shy. It was a small miracle, but it gave Elias strength. Sarah Klein's final article was a desperate jab, rehashing old rumors. It flopped, the public tired of her vendetta. But Margaret's power grew, her bill nearing a vote. Daniel decided to act. He wrote an op-ed, a raw account of his journey, his love for Elias, and his hope for a world where love wasn't a crime. It went viral, shifting the narrative. Elias and Daniel spoke at events, their voices steady despite the threats. They were no longer just lovers. They were fighters, their love a beacon for others. But the fight was exhausting, and Elias wondered if they'd ever find peace. One night, Daniel proposed, not with a ring, but with a promise, kneeling in their tiny apartment. "Marry me," he said. "Not today, not tomorrow, but when the world catches up." Elias's tears fell as he said yes, their kiss a vow against the chaos. The vote on Margaret's bill loomed, a shadow over Elias and Daniel's fragile hope. They stood together, hands clasped, as activists rallied against it. Daniel's op-ed had sparked a movement, voices rising to drown out hate. The bill failed, a narrow but powerful victory. Margaret's campaign faltered, her image tarnished by her own venom. Lily became their anchor. She joined them at rallies, her courage a mirror of Daniel's. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said one day, hugging them both. Elias felt the weight of guilt lift, replaced by gratitude. They weren't just surviving, they were building a family. The scandal faded, replaced by stories of resilience. Elias found new work with an advocacy group, his skills now serving a cause he believed in. Daniel started teaching, his warmth inspiring students. They moved to a small house outside D.C., a place where they could breathe. One spring evening, under a sky streaked with pink, they renewed their promise. No rings, no ceremony, just them, standing in their garden, vowing to love fiercely, openly, always. The world hadn't caught up, but they had each other. Their love, once a secret, was now a light, proof that even the most forbidden truths could change everything. Years later, at a Pride event, Elias and Daniel stood with Lily, now a fierce advocate herself. A young man approached, eyes bright with tears. "Your story saved me," he said. Elias squeezed Daniel's hand. Their journey painful, beautiful, unforgettably a testament to love's power to reshape the world.